History remembers the great monsters of the 20th century, the brutal dictators, the ruthless military warlords, the tyrants whose names are etched forever in ash and blood. But there is one man, a king, who orchestrated the systematic slaughter of over 10 million people, yet his name has been quietly, seamlessly scrubbed from modern school textbooks. He didn't conquer an empire through glorious battlefield victories. He didn't march an army across hostile borders. He bought it. He used a meticulously crafted fake charity to turn an entire nation into his private, corporate slave plantation and slaughtered half the population just to line his pockets with gold. This is not a story about war. This is not a story about conquest. This is a story about greed, dressed up as civilization. His name was King Leopold II of Belgium. Chapter 1: The Illusion of Philanthropy. In the late 19th century, the world's most powerful nations were carving up the African continent like a roast at a dinner party. Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, all scrambling for territory, resources, prestige. It was called the Scramble for Africa, and it was exactly as ugly as it sounds. Leopold watched this feeding frenzy from his palace in Brussels, and he wanted in, but Belgium was a tiny nation. Its parliament had no appetite for colonial adventure. Leopold had no army to speak of, no navy, no political mandate. So he did something far more cunning. He lied, not just a small lie, not a diplomatic exaggeration. He constructed one of the most elaborate, sustained, and catastrophically effective deceptions in the history of human civilization. He told the world he was going to Africa to help. In 1876, Leopold convened the Brussels Geographic Conference, an international gathering of explorers, geographers, and philanthropists. He positioned himself as a benevolent visionary. He spoke of ending the Arab slave trade, of bringing medicine and Christianity to the Dark Continent, of opening trade routes for the benefit of all mankind. The delegates were moved. The press was dazzled. The world applauded. And Leopold smiled because none of it was true. In 1885, through a combination of diplomatic maneuvering, bribery, and outright fraud, Leopold convinced the major European powers at the Berlin Conference to grant him personal sovereignty over a territory 76 times the size of Belgium. He called it the Congo Free State. Free State. Think about that. There was no freedom in the Congo Free State. There was no state in any meaningful sense. There was only Leopold and his appetite. The Congo was not a colony. It was not a protectorate. It was a privately owned extraction machine, the largest and most profitable forced labor operation in human history, and it was run by a man who never once set foot on African soil. From his palace in Brussels, surrounded by gilded furniture and priceless art, Leopold II built a kingdom of screams, and the world called him a humanitarian. Chapter 2: Constructing the Prison State. To control a territory the size of Western Europe with no standing army and no government, Leopold needed enforcers. He built one. He called it the Force Publique, a mercenary army of African soldiers commanded by white European officers, recruited through kidnapping, trained through brutality, motivated through terror. Their primary tool of enforcement was the shikote, a whip made from raw, sun-dried hippopotamus hide, cut into a long, razor-edged corkscrew strip. It was not used sparingly. Men were flogged for missing rubber quotas. Women were flogged to motivate their husbands. Children watched. The commodity Leopold wanted was rubber. In the 1890s, the global rubber boom made the Congo's wild rubber vines worth a fortune. Leopold claimed every inch of the land, the trees, the vines, the rivers, the soil, as his personal property. The Congolese people who lived there were given one function: harvest rubber. Every village was assigned a quota, every man a monthly weight to deliver. Fail the quota, and the Force Publique came. Soldiers were required to bring back proof of every bullet fired. That proof was a human hand. Severed hands became the currency of the Congo Free State, baskets of them, delivered to colonial stations as evidence of discipline. Soldiers who missed their targets would cut hands from the living just to make the count. Historians would later call this era the Red Rubber Regime. The rubber was red because it was harvested in blood. And in Brussels, the dividends kept arriving. Leopold used the profits to build parks, museums, and grand boulevards. He commissioned triumphal arches and royal palaces. He was celebrated as a great modernizer, a king who transformed Belgium into a world-class nation. Not one Belgian in 100 knew what it cost. Not one Congolese person was ever asked. Chapter 3: The Currency of Flesh. By 1890, the global demand for rubber was out of control. It wasn't just a luxury anymore. It was the lifeblood of the global industrial revolution. Bicycle tires, car prototypes, electrical insulation. The world was starving for rubber, and King Leopold owned the largest supply on Earth. But harvesting wild rubber from the African jungle was a logistical nightmare. Unlike plantation rubber, wild rubber came from massive vines that wrapped hundreds of feet into the treetops. Leopold's corporate managers realized that traditional labor wouldn't work. They needed a system of terror so absolute that men would willingly risk their lives climbing into the clouds. The Force Publique finalized their plan. They called it the hostage system. Mercenaries would swarm a peaceful village, drag all the women and young girls from their homes, and lock them in filthy, makeshift stockades. They told the men, "Go into the jungle, find the rubber vines, bring back our quota, or your wives and daughters will be distributed to our soldiers or executed." The daily quotas were physically impossible. To gather the rubber, men had to slash the vines high up in the trees. To transport it before it dried, they would smear the raw, toxic sap directly onto their own naked bodies. By the time they walked miles back to the station, the rubber had hardened onto their skin. To remove it, European overseers would literally peel the rubber off the workers' bodies, ripping away layers of their living flesh with it. If a man returned with a basket that was even a few ounces short, he was beaten with the shikote until he passed out. If he ran away, his family in the hostage camp was slaughtered, but the psychological horror reached a level of depravity that humanity had never seen before. Leopold's corporate offices in Brussels were obsessed with maximizing efficiency. They were terrified that the mercenaries in the jungle were wasting expensive European-imported ammunition on hunting wild animals. Or worse, saving bullets for a potential mutiny. To solve this, the state managers enacted a strict corporate accounting policy. For every single bullet fired by a mercenary, the soldier was required to bring back a severed human hand. The hand was the receipt. It proved to the European officers that the bullet had been spent to successfully kill a Congolese rebel. Hands became a literal currency. If a mercenary shot a wild boar for food or missed a shot at an escaping prisoner, he faced severe punishment unless he could find a hand to balance his ledger. Soldiers began raiding neighboring villages just to harvest human hands from living people. They would chop the hands off children, mothers, and elders, packing them into wicker baskets to present to their European masters at the end of the week. One terrifying account from a Belgian official named Léon Rome revealed the absolute madness of the system. He openly boasted in his journals that he used the severed heads of 21 Congolese victims to decorate the flower beds around his house. A real-life horror that inspired the character of Kurtz in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Leopold was sitting in his pristine palace in Brussels, watching his private bank accounts swell into hundreds of millions of dollars. Fully aware of the baskets of hands, he simply brushed it off, stating, "Cut off their hands? That's idiotic. I need them to work." He thought the impenetrable jungle would keep his secrets forever. He had no idea that a lone shipping clerk in England was about to look at a spreadsheet and destroy his entire empire. Chapter 4: The Spreadsheet Detective. By the late 1800s, King Leopold's corporate monopoly was airtight. No independent traders were allowed in the Congo. No outside mail was permitted. The world only knew what Leopold's highly paid public relations team told them, until a 28-year-old shipping clerk named Edmund Dean Morel was sent to the port of Antwerp to oversee the cargo ships for a British company. Morel was a brilliant statistician. He spent his days looking at boring shipping manifests, tracking numbers, and balancing ledgers. But as he stood on the docks, watching Leopold's private fleet arrive from Africa, he noticed a mathematical anomaly that didn't make any sense. The ships arriving from the Congo were heavily weighed down with millions of dollars worth of high-grade rubber and ivory. But when those same ships turned around to sail back to Africa, they weren't carrying commercial goods. They weren't carrying clothing, blankets, medicine, or trade merchandise. Morel looked closer at the secret manifests. The only cargo King Leopold was shipping back to the Congo was thousands of military-grade repeating rifles, millions of rounds of live ammunition, iron chains, and military uniforms. Morel sat in his office staring at the cold numbers on the paper. In that exact moment, the horrifying truth clicked in his mind. There was no free trade happening in Africa. There was no humanitarian mission. There was only one possible explanation for how Leopold was extracting billions in rubber without buying any goods to pay for it. It was a massive state-sponsored slave state. Morel knew that if he spoke up, he would be fired, blacklisted, and ruined, but he refused to stay silent. He resigned from his job, walk away from his salary, and launch the greatest one-man investigative journalism campaign in human history. He founded his own newspaper, the West African Mail. He began secretly reaching out to underground contacts inside the Congo, brave Christian missionaries, disillusioned Belgian soldiers, and shipping captains. He set up a secret smuggling pipeline to get diaries, documents, and eyewitness testimonies out of Africa. But his biggest weapon was the camera. Morel began publishing early, undeniable photographic evidence of Leopold's atrocities. For the first time in history, regular citizens in London, New York, and Paris opened their morning papers to see horrific, crisp photographs of Congolese fathers staring in absolute despair at the severed hands and feet of their murdered children. The illusion of the saintly, charitable king was shattered. The corporate veil had been ripped wide open. Morel had successfully turned a boring spreadsheet into a global firestorm, and now the world's most powerful empires were being forced to look directly into the graves Leopold had dug. By 1904, the fire E.D. Morel lit had become an absolute global inferno. The horrific photographs of severed hands couldn't be ignored any longer. For the first time in modern history, a global human rights movement was born. Regular citizens across Europe and the United States formed the Congo Reform Association. They packed into town halls, filled the streets, and demanded that their government step in to strip the Belgian king of his private playground. The world's greatest creative minds joined the fight. In America, the legendary author Mark Twain weaponized his satire, writing a scathing book called King Leopold's Soliloquy. In it, Twain wrote from the perspective of the evil king, showing him crying not for the millions of dead Africans, but because the camera had ruined his perfect deception. In Britain, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, published The Crime of the Congo. Doyle traveled across the West, giving packed lectures, declaring that Leopold's regime was the greatest crime ever recorded in human history. International political pressure mounted to a breaking point. The British government threatened to send warships. The United States Congress demanded an immediate international trial. Leopold was trapped. His corporate partners were abandoning him, and his health was failing. Finally, in 1908, the pressure broke his grip. The Belgian government forced Leopold to surrender his private ownership of the Congo, officially buying the territory from him to run it as a regular state colony. But Leopold refused to leave without one final, spiteful act of destruction. For 8 consecutive days in August of 1908, the furnaces inside King Leopold's palace in Brussels burned white hot. Day and night, his closest aides wheeled in thousands of boxes of secret state archives, financial ledgers, and military reports from the Congo, tossing them into the flames. Leopold stood over the fires, watching decades of systematic murder turn to ash. He turned to his advisors and said, quote, "I will give them my Congo, but they have no right to know what I did there." He successfully burned the evidence of 10 million murders. A year later, he died in his luxurious bed as one of the wealthiest men on earth, never spending a single day in a prison cell. King Leopold II thought he could hide his sins in the fireplace, but history refuses to be buried. Today, the true cost of his greed is still visible. If you walk through the streets of Brussels, You will find massive, ornate public monuments, majestic arches, and sprawling museums. Nearly all of them were built using the blood money extracted from the rubber quotas of the Congo. Towering bronze statues of Leopold still look out over the citizens of Belgium. For over a century, school textbooks in Europe framed him simply as a builder king who modernized the country entirely, leaving out the baskets of severed hands. But the truest, most tragic legacy of Leopold is found in the Congo itself. By the time his corporate regime ended, an estimated half of the entire population was dead. He didn't just steal their rubber, he completely destroyed their societal structure, wiped out entire generations of leaders, and left behind a blueprint of corporate violence that destabilized the region for a century. The modern conflicts over gold, diamonds, and cobalt that plague the Democratic Republic of the Congo today trace their roots directly back to the prison state Leopold constructed. Leopold burned his spreadsheets. He hid his crimes behind a crown, but he could not erase the millions of voices crying out from the soil. The empires of the past have fallen. Their golden palaces still stand, but beneath the stone lie the forgotten graves that built them. If you believe that the horrors of history should never be hidden or forgotten, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below, and turn on notifications. This is Graves of Empire, and we will never let the past stay buried.